This is the Watchman giving a clarion call. And before I cover the Brexit today, I want to quickly say that once a quarter I usually try to give folks the opportunity to donate to what I do. The content on my site and my YouTube channel are all free, and I'd like to keep it that way as long as I possibly can. If my articles and clarion calls have helped you or been meaningful to you, then I invite you to please give what you can at the link provided below in the description box. Both PayPal and Bitcoin are accepted, and thank you in advance for your generous support and giving. And now I'm going to cover the topic on everyone's lips, the historic, surreal victory over globalism that you and I were just lucky enough to witness and live through in Europe. The vote of the British peoples for a Brexit. Many are still not grasping the importance of what just happened here, brothers. You and I are now watching history turn on a dime. We are watching history pivot in real time, literally. We are watching the schemes of banksters, globalists, and international Zionism and their clique of twisted financiers literally cave inward on itself. Now, I guarantee you that the Brexit result caught many people, even in the city of London, totally off guard. Not folks like George Soros or Jacob Rothschild, who said they were already hedged against it and are likely even making serious fortunes right now off of it, as they do off most crises, but the lower middle and even many in the upper ranks of finance in London, I guarantee you, were caught with their pants around their ankles, okay? I'm overjoyed that the EU, the project to wipe away ancient sovereignty and nation states, the project to overturn, Christian Europe, make it pluralist, make it multicultural, make it globalist, that project has just received an enormous kick to the nads. There's no other way to say it. Brexit was a coup d'etat of working-class Anglo-Saxons and Celts, indigenous Britons who lived in Britain for dozens of centuries, who built that civilization, and who wanted to send a strong, unmistakable message, loud and clear, to the would-be planners of their land and of the world. This is our land. Back off. It's truly, truly inspiring. Look, we all knew that the emperor had no clothes. We all knew that the EU was destined for the toilet bowl of history. We all knew that this new Tower of Babel in Europe, being constructed simply and merely for the benefit of international capital, would crumble and crumble hard. But we didn't know when. We desperately needed anyone to lead this charge. And all it takes is one, folks. That's all. All it took in the 1770s was one state saying farewell to the British Empire to start the chain reaction of people standing up for themselves in the New World. All it took in the 1860s was one state kissing D.C. goodbye. And all it will take right now is for one nation state telling the EU, no thanks, we're good, bugger off. And we just got that in spades. Now, here's what I likely expect politically in Britain going forward, and I want you to listen carefully. You must grasp this right now. The legalities of leaving the EU behind are not as cut and dry as the vote itself was. That was the easy part. Okay, they're a labyrinth of treaties, laws, entrenched toxic bureaucracies that will not and cannot be severed or cut overnight. Okay, it will take time. Even if everything goes according to plan, it will take a while for this to officially happen. And here's how you can likely expect it to go down, hopefully, in the days ahead. If everything goes smoothly, it will likely still take at least 2 years to completely withdraw from the EU, and that countdown, that time apparently doesn't begin until after the next prime minister, a pro-Brexit prime minister and a pro-Brexit government, officially tells Europe that Britain wants out. So several years at least to wait through, and which in our time seems like an eternity, right? Several years, but it really isn't. Remember, this monstrous swamp thing called the EU, this unfortunate twisted brainstorm of the most wicked, cruel, wealthy internationalists on Earth, took several generations to fully birth. Okay, it took several generations to create this awful EU. So in that sense, 2 years to withdraw? That's nothing. It's a blink. It's a moment. Now, in October, if not sooner, Cameron will step down and there'll be a new pro-Brexit government with a prime minister, likely Boris Johnson, or it could be like someone like a Farage or someone we've never even heard of. Whoever it is, they will submit the official request to Brussels that they'd like to crash this party, and Parliament will then officially set a time to vote on the matter and officially make everything, legal in good order. But here's what the elites might try politically to sabotage this, to undermine this whole process and stop it from fulfilling and reaching its end goal. The globalists have no doubt been shell-shocked by Brexit. They've been shellacked. Okay, they have absolutely been turned on their heels. But they're not going to take this line down. Here are some things they might try to derail the process. Now remember, years ago, when the EU oligarchy was trying to pass treaties like the Treaty of Nice for the EU, they needed every EU member to rubber stamp it. The vote went to Ireland eventually, and the Irish heroically told the globalists to stick the Nice Treaty where the sun didn't shine. In fact, they did so with great gusto. The banksters and globalists, they wrung their hands for a few weeks, but then they just insisted that the Irish people made a ghastly mistake and that they have to vote again until they, quote, got it right. Okay? Until they gave the globalists, the EU oligarchs, what they wanted. And that second time the vote was held, the no vote failed. Okay, the EU has done this over and over and over again. They did it to Ireland. They did it to France. They did it to the Netherlands. And is it possible they'll try to do it to the UK? Will the banksters force a second vote? Well, it's possible. I mean, right now they're floating a trial balloon through petitions and other things to do so that have gotten a couple million signatures. And the radical Islamic mayor of London and others are trying to form a coalition with other crybabies who lost, like Scotland and others, the SNP who lost, who are now intent on vetoing or blocking the Brexit vote in Parliament. So it's likely they'll try to stall and buy enough time to either veto the Parliament Brexit vote or force another referendum. Now, that doesn't mean that either strategy will succeed, but it's possible. And it's why the people who won this vote, the Brexit vote, cannot sit on their laurels. They cannot afford to rest and assume that the victory is won. It is not won. Okay. Now, watch the markets, the equity markets, the banking stocks, silver and gold over the next few weeks and months. Okay, there's a lot of turbulence going on, and a lot of newcomers to the market who don't know much about what's going on in the background are probably wondering, well, why are these markets crashing? Why is Brexit such a big deal? Well, understand this and never, ever forget it. While it's true that market investors prefer predictability, the crash we've started to see take place has the banksters and globalists' fingerprints all over it. As libertarian Lou Rockwell recently said, quote, "You don't suppose that investment banks, commercial banks, and central banks, eager to punish the British and warn other rebels, had anything to do with the post-Brexit market turbulence, do you? Surely not." End quote. I think he's exactly right. I think they're trying to scare the British peoples into getting cold feet. The huge 10% downward move in the Great British Pound, probably followed by a little bit more downside, and equity downside. They're trying to scare Britons and the other 8 European countries to death who are now all contemplating their own referendums for freedom. These globalists are not yet done by a long shot. They are going to make war on all free-thinking peoples in Europe and all across the globe everywhere until they get what they want. And I'm sure you also all saw gold and silver spike on the Brexit news. It was good to see that. Gold moved up $100 in just a few hours, from the mid-12s to the mid-1300s in hours. But the market riggers were on high alert and capped their move for the next 36 hours. And even silver, it went from the mid-17s to the mid-18s in a few hours. Now, it didn't stick that close above 18. The enemy's still guarding that all-important 18 line. But I want you to see two things here that are very important. One, when chaos or the unexpected hits like the Brexit vote, gold and silver are still the first things people run to in a panic. And secondly, the banksters, as I've said, know that the masses know this about gold and silver and are desperate to keep them contained utterly desperate. They will hold these things down as long as they can, perhaps until the last few hours or days the system has left. I've always said that. Now, they got those huge spikes under control in no time flat. But if things continue to deteriorate as they are at this pace, they will not be able to keep that game going for much longer. Now, I am not simply interested in Britain, the Britain First movement, or the America First movement, or anything like that. I'm interested in the pan-global, pan-Western nationalist movements that are arising to put the kibosh on globalism. I am interested in all of it, ending globalism and cracking the spine of financial power that these institutions hold over our lives every day. The one thing I want you to see is this: the Trump movement, the Brexit movement, the nationalist movements in Germany, in France, in Sweden, in Norway, in Denmark, in Italy, in Hungary. These movements are not isolated. They are not coincidental. They get stronger as other movements get stronger. They build up energy and feed off of each other's energy. They add impetus to one another. And they build a crescendo. They build the tidal wave of nationalism that is now threatening to wash globalists in the EU and elsewhere totally away. Okay, and that's the good news. We should embrace that. We should fight with that. With them, because their struggle is our struggle. We are all in this together. All free-thinking peoples and nations are in this together against the same common enemy. And lastly, while we should favor the Brexit vote and rejoice in it, there are some conservatives in Britain or elsewhere who may be tempted to think that the worst is over, that Britain has now escaped Brussels. But you must all remember, while the Brexit vote was the single greatest nationalist victory in generations, our enemies are not going to give up. They are not going to lie down. The real battle for Britain's future, for Europe's future, and the world's future is only beginning. So let's embrace that fight as shield brothers. Let's remember that Brexit proves that we, the peoples of sovereign countries, hold a lot of power, a lot of clout, more than we ever imagined, more than our enemies want us to believe, and that if we fight tirelessly for freedom and for our people, we can win the day. The fight for British freedom and the battle for Britain and for free nations everywhere is just beginning, brothers. Embrace it. This is the Watchman signing off. Stay vigilant and bring the fight to them.